Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and welcome back to my review for chapter 225 of Tokyo Revengers. If you guys are new around here and want to keep up to date with the latest Tokyo Revengers reviews, spoilers, and just more like anime content in general, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and also be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out with the algorithm and pushes my stuff to a bunch of new amazing people. But anyway, enough of that, let's get into this chapter. So chapter 225 starts off pretty much where everything left off at the end of last chapter, with Mikey showing up and Takemichi kind of like uttering his name, not really knowing what to say or how to act because of, obviously Drakens passing. And chapter 225 is called Free For All, which is an obvious reference to what is going to be happening throughout this chapter. And the chapter starts off and we see a extremely somber looking Mikey with the entire kantou Majin gang behind him. So kind of like I predicted in the review last week, he has arrived in front of his entire gang, kind of like how in the flashback he arrived first at the dock, he's arrived here first also, and then they've shown up just behind him. And pretty much we have all three gangs kind of standing opposite each other just before they all run in. Takemichi's thinking to himself like, no, you can't fight here now, because obviously of what's just happened with Draken, there's probably police around the area or heading to the area now because of the gunshots that were fired, and the fact that there's an ambulance there probably means that they are close by as well, or at least that's what I'm thinking. Although we don't see any ambulance throughout this chapter, so I'm wondering if it's already taken Draken to, the hospital or wherever Draken needs to be taken now that he's passed. But Takomi screams out that this fight is for Draken, and the battle of the three deities war begins, and we finally get to see, Senju again for the first time since I think 207 now, and he's rushing in with the entire gang, so he's like the fighting force of the kantou Majin gang, leaving Mikey and Coco to kind of stand back and watch the entire conflict as it happens. We get a really cool panel of all three gangs kind of going at it with everyone punching each other and just blood everywhere. It's just an awesome panel, and you can see the scope of the amount of people that are actually fighting around this parking lot kind of area. And Takomi's screaming out, telling the kantou Majin gang that they need to leave because they've abandoned Draken, and now this is the result of their abandonment, him being shot by the opposing gang. And all the while this is going on, Senju is still trying to get Brahman to stop, but they've kind of just lost control obviously here, and she can't seem to get any of them to listen to her or stop fighting, so it's completely out of her control, and Akashi has more or less taken command of the entire gang. But from Takemichi and the complete brawl that was going on, we go over to Mikey, who's kind of just standing and looking at the entire situation, and Coco asks him if he's going to make any moves, if he's going to fight throughout this conflict. And Mikey ends up replying no, obviously he's going to leave this all to Senju and the rest of the kantou Majin to clean up, as he believes he doesn't really need to involve himself by the looks of this. And then I think we get something that's extremely interesting as to, does Mikey even actually know about Draken's demise yet? As here, Coco asks him, he's like, you don't really care about it. And a confused Mikey kind of looks back at him and he says about what? And flashes over to Takemichi as well, kind of just looking at the two while they're talking, completely confused. And I think this is kind of showing that Mikey doesn't actually know Draken has been shot here. He's just driven straight to this area because he had a bad feeling. So I'm wondering if he's going to find out at the start of the next chapter, because it doesn't look like he's going to find out throughout this chapter, obviously, or it hasn't been mentioned to him yet. It could be mentioned to him now, and then at the start of the next chapter we kind of see an even more distraught looking Mikey find out about the actual death of Draken. So towards the end of the chapter, we go over to Torano and Akashi's kind of point of view, and we kind of get these two guys' perspective, I guess, towards the end of the chapter here, with Torano saying, my former Tenjiku boys, let's forget about the kantou Majin gang, shall we, and settle Brahman first. So obviously he's referring to, the Hitani brothers, Kikucho, and then the guy from the S62 generation that is part of their group. But after an enraged Akashi kind of runs at South and he tries to get past a whole bunch of the rokuhara guys who are in front of him, Senju screams at Takomi to tell him to get a hold of himself. But as she runs into, trying to assist him and help him out in some kind of way, she's blocked off by Wakasa, who tells her not to get involved because this fight isn't like any other, as someone's life has just been taken, and that person was Draken. He then tells Takemichi to take care of Brahman's princess, and then him and Benkei kind of sprint into the fight. And I'm hoping nothing bad happens to Senju here, as the entire line of Takemichi being told to take care of someone usually results in either something bad happening to the person that tells them to take care of that person, or the person underneath Takemichi's care ends up being wounded in some kind of way and possibly dying. But after they sprint in, we go back over to Takomi in South, and Takomi is still trying to get through like all of the fodder that are in front of him on his like path to Toronto. And he's like screaming at Toronto saying like, why did you kill Draken? He wasn't even a formal member of Brahman. If you wanted to kill someone, it should have been me. And funnily enough, Toronto walks up to, you know, the so-called god of war, Akashi, and he says to him like, this is war, and goes to like punch him in the face. But just as he does that, Benkei out of nowhere shows up and like blocks his punch, and you can see over the back of Benkei's shoulder, Wakasa like flies over Benkei and kicks Toronto in like the back of the head and then lands on the ground like sliding in an extremely similar way to what Senju did when we first met her. So I'm wondering if Wakasa is possibly the person who has taught Senju, I guess, all of her, you know, fighting styles and techniques that we've seen her use so far throughout the story. I'm wondering, like, did he also train at the same area that Mikey trained in when he was younger? Because as we know, Shinichiro definitely did train there, and what if these guys also trained with Shinichiro when he was younger in the dojo? We didn't see them in the flashback in the past before from memory, but it's just an idea. But in the last panel of the entire chapter, we get Wakasa and Benkei standing in front of Toronto holding up Takomi, and they're like telling Toronto that they're dealing with him. So I'm wondering if Akashi is going to fight with the two guys, or if it's going to be Benkei and Wakasa versus Toronto. As I hope it is, you can see the wound or like the bruise on the back of his head. So he's actually suffered like some kind of bruise, or he's actually, you know, had a wound inflicted to him. Because as we know, we've seen in the past, people have been punched, but they come out completely unscathed. Whereas here, he's actually been kicked in the head, and you can see that he's taken a little bit of damage in some kind of way. So I'm wondering if Wakasa is actually quite strong. Obviously, there is probably some kind of age gap between the majority of the people here. I'm assuming that Toronto is probably of a similar age to these older Brahman members here that originated from the Black Dragon. So I'm wondering if possibly he was around back in like that kind of time, if he knew them back then, or if he's traveled to Tokyo like he said earlier on, I'm pretty sure, and is now trying to become, you know, the #1 delinquent gang in all of Tokyo or all of Japan. So I'm wondering if that's what like his thoughts are and his goals exactly. But I'd love to see more of Benkei. Obviously, I don't think he's as much of a flashy fighter as Wakasa, but I can expect that most likely Kikucho and the Hitani brothers are most likely going to, you know, try and interfere in this fight as well, and there'd be like a few different pairings between those different people, or at least I would imagine that's probably going to happen. With Mikey, I definitely think he's going to find out next chapter that Draken has actually passed away, because it doesn't seem like he knows here, or his reaction just doesn't seem like how he would normally react when one of his closest friends has passed away, or like a family member. Like, he doesn't look like he's dead inside like he did with Emma, or he doesn't, you know, look like he's lost it completely like he did with Kazutora. And even going back to, you know, what Coco says to Mikey, I wonder if the tone's different on, you know, how he says it. I wonder if Mikey actually does know, and Coco's just like asking to him if he really just doesn't care anymore about it, because it would be an extremely interesting dynamic to find out that Mikey just actually doesn't care that Draken has died here, because as we know, he's tried to break things off in the past. I don't think that would be the case. I just think Mikey doesn't really know at the moment what's happened to him, and he's probably going to find out in the next chapter, or at least that's what I imagine. But ending off this chapter, we get the text Tyrant versus Legends. So obviously that's referring to Toronto again versing off against the Legends of the Black Dragons. So I'm wondering maybe if the next chapter is going to originate around these guys actually entirely, and the next chapter might even be called Tyrant versus Legends. Just a thought completely. But yeah, anyway, I'd love to know what you guys all think down in the comment section below. And if you guys are new around here and want to keep up to date with the latest Tokyo Revengers, spoilers, reviews, and just like more other anime content in general, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out with the algorithm and pushes my stuff to a bunch of new amazing people. And like I said earlier on in the video, make sure you join my Discord as well, or follow me on Twitter so you can keep up to date with these spoilers and rumors that are going around, as sometimes they will be a little bit incorrect on the channel, but I will update you guys over on those platforms. But yeah, anyway, enough of that. For now, it's been professional degenerate Diavolo, and I'll see you all in a bit. Bye.